It's a brand new year. All the problems we had have disappeared. We have a very lumpy rug because of all the stuff we've swept under it, but all of the problems have disappeared. This is Vaguely Scientific. I am Derek, and I am Derek. Jim the scientist will be joining me as soon as he finishes up with some science. Hi, Jim.
I've been done with that for hours.
Oh, it's because we took so long with the intro.
Well, I stopped and got McDonald's, so...
Good. And please give a big round of applause for this week's guest. I'll wait.
Oh, hi, I'm Mark. And the toy in my Happy Meal today is science.
Ooh.
I was just assuming that there was going to be applause before I introduced you, but...
So, I want to derail the show for a minute, because now we're talking about Happy Meal toys.
Oh, no.
Allie got one of those, like, adult Happy Meals they put out recently, and they had toys in them. And it was, I assume it was for Halloween, and it is I forget the name of the bird person in the McDonald's canon.
The who?
There's like a bird person.
Oh, birdie, early bird.
Maybe? Yeah, early bird, sure. But for reasons that I cannot wrap my head around, this bird person has 4 eyes and 2 sets of goggles.
Whoa.
It looks like a printing error, and it is sitting on Allie's desk at work, and it makes me angry every time I look at it.
Makes you angry, and I bet that's why Allie kept it on her desk.
Almost certain.
Well, I guess getting back on track here, this is the show where we answer the most ridiculous audience-submitted questions in a manner that we like to call vaguely scientific, which is why we call the show that. But before we answer those questions, Jim, you should give us a fun science fact of the day.
All right. So this one I think is really interesting, and it is a little different than my normal space facts because it's also a lot about like explosions, I guess. So Saturn's moon Phoebe has lost a lot of mass through impacts, and a lot of that debris has actually gone into orbit around Saturn, becoming what is referred to as the Phoebe ring. This ring was discovered fairly recently. It's actually incredibly hard to see. We only discovered it because we used the infrared Spitzer Space Telescope and happened to spot it. It's like much larger than all of Saturn's other rings. It's way, way far away from the planet. But yeah, Phoebe's a weird moon.
And it's caused by debris from the moon.
Yeah, because the thing about Phoebe is that it apparently was round at some point, and it was larger. It is what we call differentiated. So basically it was big enough that it got hot inside and all of the layers sort of layered out. Like, you know, Earth has the mantle and the core and all that. That happened to Phoebe. And then it got hit so many times that it got blasted down into like a lumpy potato shaped asteroid looking thing.
So how could we give Earth a ring?
Well, we could destroy an asteroid near Earth. That would be one way. Earth actually does have an artificial ring of satellites.
That's your space junk.
Fair.
Yeah, and space junk.
I should say that is not one of our questions for this episode.
No,
good question, though.
But it could be.
I just thought of it now. Well, instead of talking about that, maybe we'll save that for a future episode. But maybe we should get to the actual first question this episode. And question 1 this week comes to us from Justin. Are the colors you see the same as the colors other people see? I am very excited to talk about this.
So I have something that I wanted to mention first.
Okay.
That I think is maybe not in the spirit of the question, but maybe it is. I don't know. I have a much broader definition of what I think orange is and what orange encompasses than some people do, I think. And I've discovered this because over the years I've said, oh, this is like an orange thing. And they're like, no, that's yellow. A really common example of this is that if you burn sodium, I think it's an orange color. Other people think it's yellow. It's a definitional thing. Like, I don't have any kind of color blindness or anything. So it's all just like, I think it's more orange. Other people think it's more yellow. It's really neither. It's in between both.
It's interesting that you're specifically using orange, because a lot of the times when people say something is red, I think it is, like, when it's more yellow than, I think that it's orange, and people will say that's the definitive red, like primary red color. And I'll be like, that's not red enough.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of the in-between colors divide people. I know a lot of people that they don't get into fights or anything over it, but like they're like, oh, it's like the blue-green color, and it's like, oh, it's more blue, it's more green.
Right.
It could be either, really. Like some of those shades in between are, especially with blue and green, I think you could kind of go either way sometimes.
I define red by the red Power Ranger.
That's a very red.
Yeah.
that's red to me.
It makes sense to me that like what do they call it? It's not a composite color, but like a complex color that's a mixture of two primary colors would be something that people would see differently.
Yeah. And I think especially when you start getting into like the weird granular colors like vermilion and chartreuse and stuff like that. I know a lot of those colors because there was a song on Blue's Clues that I happened to hear several times because of my sisters.
Nice.
The one that I was really surprised by, because I was looking up random composite colors today, and vermilion, I was expecting to be a lot more orange because of Pokemon, because Vermilion City in the game is like a more orange color. And vermilion, when I looked at actual vermilion, it's like, this is just red. Like, this is as close to red as you can get without being red.
Well, I guess we're kind of hitting on something that I have a little bit of notes about, so I guess I'll go with that. We're talking about how we define specific colors. So we've already listed a few different reds that we decided are red, and this is one way to kind of tackle this question, which is the sign signifier angle, and that's kind of to explain the problem in this question. If two people are looking at the same object, they can mutually decide this object is defined as elephant. And then they agree this thing that they're observing is elephant, and then they can go their separate ways and be happy. The problem there is that what if we look at how they're observing it, and this is something we've talked about on this show before. Say there are 5 different people and they're all blind, and and they have an elephant in the room, and they get to touch a different part of the elephant. One touches its trunk, one touches its tail, one touches its belly, and 2 others, because I said 5 for some reason. And those people all say, what we're feeling right now is elephant. They've defined it as elephant, and then they leave the room. They all have a very different perspective of what that thing is.
Yeah. And well, the interesting thing about that, I think, is that there are some things that they would all feel in common, because elephant skin is kind of like lumpy and rough. So they would have that experience in common, but like a leg and a trunk are going to feel a lot different, even though they are kind of similar. And an elephant tummy.
There's an interesting debate how different cultures name their colors. And I was doing a little research on this. There are 2 sides to the debate. There are the universalists who believe that because our biology is all the same, the way that we receive color signals is the same in our eyes and retinas, that languages must develop names for colors along set rules. There must be a universal pathway for different cultures to recognize colors. And then there are the relativists, which might be the people who are feeling like different parts of the elephant. Relativists point to culture-specific phenomena to create variances in color names. So different cultures may have different experiences with different colors. Different colors may mean different things to them. Different colors may be more common in their environment. so they may
Oh.
recognize different colors more readily.
Oh, that makes sense.
I think my last reading, they've kind of like fused, and the most recent conclusion is that maybe biologically we see color the same, but we interpret it differently.
Interesting. So something that we can do is measure the physics of light.
Yeah.
We can measure how light refracts through a lens, for example. So we can kind of like calculate, and this is how we've studied different animals, like how different animals can see different parts of the color spectrum than we can. We can see how their eyes absorb light. And even people who have like color blindness generally is caused by like a lack of cones in their eyes, which is what absorbs color. But while we can measure the wavelength of like radiation, and how light is broken up through a prism and stuff like that, what you can't actually do, or what you can't observe, is the experience a person is having, like the mental image. And so this is a little bit philosophical, I guess, but there's an argument here. So a lot of times on this show we talk about things like, why do cats do weird things, or why do animals have an evolutionary interest in their predators? It's something we just talked about in the Halloween episode not terribly long ago. And what's in philosophy, these are called quote unquote easy questions. They are they're not really easy questions, but like they are something where there's a direction we can go in. But this problem, this question that we're talking about now, is what would be called a hard question in philosophy. I know it's very technical terms, but these are types of things where we're explaining a sensation or a feeling, and these kind of ineffable things that we perceive are called qualia, and that's something like feeling pain, or smelling something, tasting something, or how we perceive color is a qualia. And the reason that in philosophy this is called a hard problem is something called the explanatory gap.
Yeah, I read about that.
Did you?
Yeah.
Cool. So the explanatory gap in philosophy is defined as the difficulty that people have in explaining how physical properties give rise to the way things feel subjectively when they are experienced. And so an example given, I'm sorry, Mark, if I'm jumping over your
No,
research.
I love this.
So this first came up in 1983. A philosopher named Joseph Levine wrote about this. And the example that he gave was describing the feeling of pain to a being that was capable of rational thought and communication, but incapable of feeling pain. And the best he could really do was to define pain by saying pain is the firing of C fibers in your nervous system. And this might be a valid physiological definition of what's happening, but it doesn't really give you any information about what pain is.
Yeah, it's totally fair. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's wild because that's like one of those things where I was thinking about this today because like my son is learning how to speak with words.
Okay.
And I don't know why, but I was thinking about like, how do you explain what a color is? Because I'm like, here's the red bus, or like here's the blue sippy cup, and it's like, but what is blue? Sure, it's like a range of wavelengths in nanometers, but that doesn't tell you the experience of blue. You just have to experience blue.
Yeah.
You just have to experience blue, right? Yeah.
Have your blue period. That's what consonants say.
The large blue collider.
Yeah, but I find that so fascinating when I was reading about how light enters the eyes and is interpreted by cones and rods, and then it goes through the brain back to the visual cortex in the back of the head, I believe. And it's not just color that's being interpreted back there. It's the orientation of an object, like memories of an object, like what does this bring to mind, anything that's happened to us before, and a whole bunch of other stuff. There's a link I can share from the American, uh, I think it's Museum of Art History. They did a little page on light. They're talking about like a beach ball that's many, many colors. And when you're looking at a beach ball, the back of your head is interpreting the colors on it, but also it's coming towards me. Like how much strength do I need to hit this to reach a friend over the volleyball net or whatever? So
okay. So like spatial reasoning kind of stuff.
Yeah, and all of those things come together to create a picture for us to react to. So yeah, you kind of have to experience blue in order to really know what blue is.
I kind of thought about taste rather than color, to try and kind of wrap my head around this, which this is not at all a good comparison, but I kind of want to take you on the journey I tried to go on. So I'm thinking of how two people can taste something. I'm going to use the example of coffee because I do not like the taste of coffee, but a lot of people do.
That's fair.
And so like the fact that we can taste the same thing and one person thinks it's good and another person thinks it's bad, is a little bizarre in that sense. Yeah. And I kind of looked at, like, as we age, our taste buds do dull and regrow and change. So like things I thought were delicious when I was a kid, like really super corn syrupy candies,
right,
I think are really gross and too sweet now.
Yeah.
But that's like an actual physical change. And as far as we can tell, anyone, unless you go colorblind due to some kind of injury or something, your eyes don't really start seeing colors differently as you age, as far as we know. But people do have different favorite colors. So it's kind of like I see this color car and think it looks really good, whereas somebody else can see the same color car and be like, oh, that's too bright or too loud, because I like loud colors because I'm, me.
Yeah.
But I can, like, how is that? And of course there's like cultural stuff that goes in with that, but like we're seeing the same thing, right? Or are we?
Well, that's actually something I was thinking about, and that, and also the idea that like some people are much better at matching colors and like coordinating colors, because like I'll just throw any old clothes on. I don't really think about whether they clash or if they match or whatever. And luckily, I predominantly wear blue jeans, so basically everything goes with blue jeans. But but like, if I had to like wear colored pants and get them to match shirts, I'd have to like sit and think about it for a while. And it makes me wonder, like, people who are bad at that, like me, maybe they don't have as much of like maybe they perceive colors slightly differently, so that it's or like compared to someone who can just look at a shirt and pants and be like, those are perfect complementary colors.
Yeah.
Or like it, and it's always interesting to me, people who like to mix and match things like green and pink, which to me look abysmal together, but some people think it looks fun and exciting. And
that's the watermelon color scheme. I love that.
Yeah. Well, for dice it looks great, but for like a shirt and pants, I don't know. But that always makes me wonder if maybe people like is what I perceive as red what somebody else would perceive as blue, even though we would call them both, red, but like when they look at it, does it look what I see as blue? That is, I think that's probably the most mind-bending question to me.
And that's why it's philosophically speaking, a hard question.
Yeah.
I get a lot of flack for color coordination in clothing specifically, since you mentioned that, because I am an artist. I assure you I can match complementary colors and come up with a color scheme, but when I'm putting on clothes, I'm going for comfort.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I'd never thought about combining colors and being able to but isn't the concept of like being able to coordinate your colors, isn't that like a cultural concept almost?
Well, we could talk about color theory. Let's not. But that's such a weird topic because it is cultural, but it's one of those things you kind of were talking about. There are universalists that decide, or that think there is a definitive correct way to, like, a correct color wheel, I guess, and that it's something that every culture kind of naturally discovers on its own.
Is the color wheel, does that happen to be the European version?
It probably is. But I mean, the most simplified version is just like how light is broken up. So where colors are located on the spectrum, or how, like, what's adjacent to what on a rainbow. But the other thing that I kind of wanted to say is there's a difference between, because Jim, you're saying, what if what I see as red, somebody else sees as blue, and even complementary colors. There's a difference between what if, so like blue and yellow are complementary colors and red and green are complementary colors. What if you see blue and yellow and I see red and green and we just still think that they complement each other?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if somebody is actually colorblind, you might point, if they're red-green colorblind, for example, you might point to something that is green and say that's green, and they'll be like, okay, I agree with you. And then you could point to something red and be like, what color is that? And they'll say that is also green.
It's interesting, and I suppose that there's really no way you can ever know, because we all experience things the way we experience them, you know?
And then the hard-hitting question of, does it matter if what I see as red, you see as blue?
That's true. I mean, because we all look at a color and say, oh, that's red. Even if our brains are like wired differently enough that to you that red is the same as my blue. But we both interpret it as the color red because that's what we were told it was called. So
yeah, I was gonna say, like, in like our ancestors are looking at what types of berries are poisonous or whatever. It's like, oh, in this environment it's the red ones. They would be able to recognize and communicate that to each other by recognizing red, right? Creating a word for red, and then using that to describe the thing that is bad. But so would somebody who sees red as blue, would they just be in hot water in that situation, or would they be able to, like, oh, I know, when people say red, they mean?
Well, that gets to the root of, like, these. We're not defining our personal experience of the color. We're defining a thing that we're all observing together.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's why, like, evolutionarily speaking, you know, it's the language that really matters here. So, like, we've decided that apple is red. Everyone agrees. It doesn't matter what you actually think. It's we've all agreed that's what it's called.
Yeah. Okay. So we all call the apple red, and whatever, like, another person actually sees that color as doesn't really matter because we all know it's red, whatever that is.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter from, like, a pragmatic sense, I guess.
Yeah.
But, well, then you get into, like, what if we actually did develop the ability to, like, read people's thoughts or analyze people's like mental images of stuff, and what if you were like doing that and you're looking at a screen and all these images come up and you're like, oh, this person has some really freaky mental images, and then they look at the screen and they're like, that's just my mom.
It's just the I think it'd be hilarious if you did that and it was just like if you did the color inversion thing in like Photoshop and just inverted all the colors, and that's just how they see the world.
That's just how they see the world. And it's still, like, you can still figure out light and dark because there's still contrast.
Right.
Oh, that's bizarre.
I think what's interesting about the importance of language in the discussion of color is that we can have the impression that someone else is seeing something totally different, even if, like, the signals they're receiving, you know, the picture is the same, but because we use different words, our brains tell us, like, no, they're seeing something different.
That gets, I mean, getting a little bit away from the color thing, like, that happens all the time in social discourse.
Yeah.
Just in how you're communicating. People don't define the terms of what they're talking about up front, and that's how, like, misunderstandings happen. There is merit to this conversation after all. Well, without further ado, we should move on to our second question this week. And question 2 this week comes to us from David Jones. Is there life on Mars?
Well, there's a starman waiting in the sky.
Good point. So question 3 this week. If there were another you, do you think you would get along with them?
Love this question.
I think I would.
So right off the bat, I'm going to say, what does it mean that there's another you?
I've heard cloning discussions on this show before, so I know we're in good hands with the two of you.
I don't know why I defaulted to like parallel universe me. Maybe that just is where my headspace is.
I went through all the definitions of how another you could be interpreted to me. Like I didn't do an extensive amount of research on that. I just kind of like, what are all the ways I can think to define it? And then I have an answer for each of those. So alternate universe, I guess, is the first thing we're going to go with. If I meet myself from an alternate reality and we have the same life experience, I think we would probably get along and share similar interests. So like probably, do things together. But meeting each other, it means I don't, if it's like an alternate person, if it's a separate person, I can't necessarily see what they're thinking. So like, I know all the things I do are motivated by my thought process, but all the things this person does, even though they're things I would have done under the exact circumstances they are in, I don't necessarily know that. So if we're just kind of lumped into the same world, would we have to like compete with each other for our position in our family or a job or like romantic partners?
Ah, I see.
Oh my God.
I hadn't thought about all that. I was just like, oh, they dipped in from their parallel world for a coffee.
Yeah. And that could be a good conversation.
There was a movie. Oh boy. I don't know what it was or when it came out. I remember seeing it. And it was about a guy who had a lot of different like familial and social obligations and work obligations. And he's like, boy, I'd really just like to have a minute, So he goes and gets a clone made of him and, lets it do a lot of his stuff so he can just have a minute. And then when he's done having his minute, he's like, all right, back to my normal life. And the clone's like, I mean, I like being married to your wife because I have all of your memories and I like your kids a lot because they're my kids. And I don't remember how the movie resolved, but I remember that being a movie.
There is a show. It's a series on Netflix. I think it's just one season, but it's called Living with Yourself. And Paul Rudd is the star. And it's the same premise. Some people say, well, so they don't tell him he's going to clone himself. They just say, we're going to make you better at everything. So he goes and what it turns out is what they do is they bring people into this clinic and they kill them and then they clone them, but like enhance all of their genetics. So like they make a better version of them. But then the twist in this show is that Paul Rudd, the Paul Rudd Prime, doesn't get killed. So he shows up and he's like, there's another me. That's not me. I would have just been dead.
Interesting. It'd be really funny if Paul Rudd was in the original movie I just talked about.
It just reminded me of the premise, so I don't know what movie that is.
I think, oh boy. I mean, I would have to assume that if I was competing with them against like all of my life prospects, I would probably not like them.
Yeah. I hate that guy.
It can turn on you.
Yeah. If it was just like, oh yeah, we dipped in and we chatted for a bit and then they went back to their world or whatever, or like time travel where they like came back and said, hey, I'm you from like an hour in the future and I wanted to see how things were going. Let's have a cup of coffee. I think I'd get along with myself famously. I'm so easy to get along with.
Well, that's fair, I guess. Well, on that note, I'm less easy to get along with. Not really, but we've all like experienced in our life misunderstandings where someone maybe thought something about us, like maybe we were in a bad mood for some specific reason, and then we came across as rude to someone.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I know for me personally, if I'm in a bad mood, I'm not like a social person. And if I happen to be in a good mood and I met a double of myself who was not in a good mood, I might think that person's a jerk.
But on the other hand, though, you would also know all of the sort of like shorthand, like maybe this is like a me thing where I would think if I saw myself in a bad mood, I would recognize that deep down inside, there's the undercurrent of chill that I can reach because I know myself.
Perhaps, yeah.
You'd be able to bring yourself out of a bad mood.
Yeah. And actually, in a very similar vein, I was thinking of the fact that I think it would be really fun to have like this weird social shorthand of all these extremely obscure anime and video game references that are in my head and just have a whole conversation that literally no one else would understand.
Yeah. Oh, the in-jokes would be amazing.
Oh, yeah.
You'd finally have someone to talk to about Nadesico.
I would. I'm so excited about this.
So this is kind of the alternate universe or like an exact clone idea of ourself. And the only thing I could really think of for exact clone is like, say we take a save state of myself right now. Mm-hmm. From that point on, we are no longer going to have the exact same experiences.
Oh, yeah.
So like right now we'd be on the same page, but eventually we're going to start to deviate. Mm-hmm. And so probably there's a good foundation of like a friendship there. But like, maybe down the road we'll start saying, well, I saw this thing and I liked it and you didn't have a good experience with that. So we're going to argue about this thing.
I don't expect me to be an argumentative person. My argument is that I'm not argumentative.
And I'll die on that hill.
I'll die on that. How dare you suggest otherwise?
I think my work would love having two me's.
She's the only one.
I said my work.
Oh, your work. I thought you said my wife.
Oh. I don't know if she could handle two.
I could have sworn you said my wife.
My wife.
My wife. So another thing, I don't have a lot of thoughts about this because I think it could go in so many different directions, but like if there's another me, if we define me as like my consciousness, like, do I perceive things through two different bodies? In which case, probably I get along, but like...
Oh, I hate the hive mind idea.
But the hive mind idea, right? Like, would that work? We would have to get along, right?
Yeah.
Would you just get on each other's nerves? Like, would you both go to work and you would tell the other you, like, you need to eat breakfast. We're starving. Like, I feel your hunger over here, and I'm dying.
Yeah, you need to get some sleep because I'm getting worn out here.
Yeah.
Why are you playing D&D up until like 3 a.m. every night? You gotta stop doing that.
Like, that's.
I don't need another me telling me that I need to go to bed. I already know I should go to bed. I'm making choices over here.
You've already decided you don't want to go to bed. And
yeah, I'm not tired. Like, I can't help that I'm not tired. It's my body's fault. If I was tired, I'd go to bed.
So there's a way that this topic ties really well into the first question, which I kind of discovered as I was like thinking about it. And that is the theory of mind, and that is essentially the human ability to understand that other beings might have access to information that we do not. Not a lot of animals have demonstrated the ability, and there's not really a great way to test it in animals that don't speak English. But the reason, that fits so well with the first question because, like, gorillas, it is very unlikely that a gorilla has ever thought, I wonder if what I see as red the other people, but we think things like that. We want to know what the other person's perspective, because we understand that they have a different perspective. And something I wanted to tell you guys about is something called the Sally Ann test.
I've never heard this.
You've never heard this. And this is I just thought that was kind of cool. It's studying when human beings develop the ability to realize not everyone has the same thought process as them. So this is done with children of various ages. But the test is this. So there's two characters in this little story, Sally and Anne, and it could just be like person A, person B, but the original test used this, so that's what I'm citing. But so Sally has a marble, or both Sally and Anne have baskets, and Sally has a marble, and Sally hides her marble in her basket, and then she leaves, and Anne takes the marble out of Sally's basket and puts it in her own basket. And then Sally comes back. And at this point, you ask the child, where will Sally look for her marble? And most kids under the age of 4 will say she'll look in Anne's basket because that's where it is. And it isn't until about the age of 4 that they start saying, oh, well, she'll look in her own basket because she doesn't know that Anne took it. And so they don't understand that, other people don't have the same information that they do. So I thought that was really neat. That's all.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess if we're talking about the hive mind version of this question, then that would be kind of irrelevant and scary.
Yeah. Everybody knows where the marble is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is fascinating. It brings to mind the experience that different people have when they are reading stories, listening to that story. I was thinking, when you read a story, you kind of have to put yourself in the shoes of a character. You have to identify with somebody else. And I know some people, when they read Game of Thrones, for example, are very mad at Ned Stark because why are you doing this? I know the trouble that's waiting in the wings for you. You shouldn't do this.
That's like when you're at the theater and it's a horror movie and they're like, don't go in there.
Don't go in there. We all know
the
that
characters don't know. We know.
Exactly.
There's a phenomenon that happens. I read about this before, and I don't, this was years ago that I read about it, so I don't remember exactly what it was actually talking about. But what I remember about it is this romantic comedy problem. And this is kind of probably more with people in high school, but this kind of idea that you'll watch, say, a well-received romantic comedy, and you'll kind of empathize with the characters and be like, I want that. I want to have a meet cute or something where this character legitimately, or how come this character thinks I'm being mean? Don't they understand that I tried to get them a birthday present or something like that? And there are people that have a legitimate blind spot for the fact that in a romantic comedy, you are a third person observer of both people's perspective.
Right.
That's why it's easy to see if there's a feud between two people and you're a third person, it's easier to divorce yourself from.
Right. Or oh boy, it's been such a long time since I've seen Mrs. Doubtfire. But a lot of people, yeah, I know, it's so good. A lot of people are like, oh, I empathize deeply with Robin Williams' character because he's just trying to do right by his family. And it's but that was a whole creepy thing. I super understand why everyone got mad at him in the end.
Yep. What he did was not an okay thing to do, legally speaking. And
it's very funny to watch, but in real life, we would all agree that that was a horrible, horrible thing. And it was not okay.
Reading that story in a newspaper would be a very different experience.
Right? Everybody would think this creep showed up at his ex-wife's house.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, you can see their perspective. You sympathize with that character because you have information that no one else would have.
Yeah. So if I met myself, this is something that I really feel like I struggle with this question over the years because I used to think like, no, I would hate myself because I feel so like self-critical in my own head
Oh,
sometimes.
right.
Mhm.
I feel like I have myself watching over my shoulder like all the time, pointing out the things I'm doing wrong.
Oh.
That's interesting because I'm very much the same way, but there's also like the teeny part of me down in the core of my organs that's like, actually, you're pretty okay. And I think that seeing myself from the outside would allow me to be like, hey, you're not bad.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
great, so
I don't think external me would be mean to other external me, if that makes any sense.
Well, I mean, that's a good point. Like, because you're just not a mean person. So, like, it's unlikely that you'd have a reason to be mean to what would essentially at this point just be a random person.
Yeah, but I also am very much like Mark said. I'm very critical of myself, and like I think that if I was another person, I would not be, if that makes any sense.
That's so my view of myself is I carry myself with a lot of confidence, but like most people, I am aware of my flaws, and if you make a mistake, you notice it more than anyone else does, right? So I wonder, and I guess this can't really talk to the question at large, but just specifically me. If I were to see me and not know that, this person is just being confident because there's a job that needs to be done, I might be like, wow, that guy's just like very, very good at what he does and very like does not give the air of having any faults, but really I do,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's how people perceive me. Possibly people just perceive me as being really arrogant. I don't.
No.
I don't think so.
No.
I just had an interesting thought, actually. I would love to see one of the things at work that I often say is that we always should try to see other people do like specific parts of our job that we do so that we can see how other people do it.
Yeah.
And I always do shows and things like that, and I'm like, this was terrible. This is the worst one I've ever done. But the secret, of course, is that as long as nobody else knows that you've done anything wrong, which I don't really do anything that bad, but like as long as the other people don't know, then it doesn't matter because they still had a great time and enjoyed everything. But I would love to watch myself do a program. That would be interesting.
So that gets to. Because in theater, that's if you drop a line in a play, for example, unless it's like a super crucial line, which there are some of those, but like you can paraphrase, and most of the time the audience is not going to know that it was different. But you are going to know, I skipped that line. I don't know why I skipped that line.
Right.
But that's why, like, there are a lot of people who try to direct a show that they are also acting in. And I won't go across the board and say that it can't be done, but I will go across the board and say that it shouldn't be. Because if you're on stage, for example, you have an idea of what you're doing. Like, assuming you've put thought into the role and have studied the character, you are trying to convey something, but you don't actually know how that is coming across.
Oh, yeah. We don't know how other people perceive us. We only have an idea of, we can label ourselves and make assessments of ourselves, but we have no idea what other people are thinking.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm still thinking about an argument I had in 1997 with a person who probably doesn't remember my name or my existence anymore.
So would I get along with myself? I mean, if there's only one of me, I get along with myself okay. I guess that's not true of everyone.
What if there were like 5 of you in a room together? Oh man, think of the board gaming. That'd be so interesting.
There you go.
I want to play Power Grid with 5 of me.
Just think if you're someone who's prone to cheat at board games and you're in a room with 5 other yous and just no one's going to trust anyone.
Well, that would be so interesting because like I don't cheat at board games, but then I'm also thinking about like times where I've played games with other people and like I'm like, oh, I would have done something different in this scenario, and how it plays out is for the game to decide, I guess you could say. But like, then every time I do something, and be like, oh, that's what I would have done because I did it.
I like to think that I would be much more productive if I had other copies of myself. But
I know I would not be.
But like realistically, I don't think I would be. Because we all want to procrastinate.
Yeah.
I need to like get some work done.
But it would be fun procrastination. Also, you could have your workload.
Yeah, if you're actually doing the work, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be fun procrastination is a good point because like a lot of times if I want to do something that requires multiple people, like other people need to also want to do that thing.
Yeah.
And like I know everybody in this room likes this board game, for example. So let's play this board game.
Oh man, I want to play a 5-person of me of Formula D, just a season of that, because that would be so wild.
Well, I think what we're talking about now is if we had other versions of us that were also an extension of us. Right? If I had 4 other me's to play a board game with, it's almost like they're like it's almost like they're a tool for my own amusement. But like that's all. But that's true for all 5 of us at the table, right? So that's okay, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a character in Marvel Comics that's called Multiple Man. And I believe his power is to be able to like duplicate himself at will.
Oh.
And so like if you're always so these would be like brand new clones. I don't know how the consciousness thing works. If like he's in control of all of himself. I don't know enough about that character.
Mm-hmm.
That could potentially be a useful superpower.
That could also be that hive mind thing that I don't want.
Yeah.
I'm so upset about the hive mind.
So, well, the reason I don't want the hive mind is because I can't really kind of process how it would work.
It's so hard to conceptualize.
Yeah.
Like, it's different fundamentally than what I think of when I think of hive minds. Because when I think of like the Borg, I always think of them as sort of like they do a specific thing, and they are like an individual in the sense that they are like a drone, and they don't really think much, but they are they can like do a task and then tap into the network. Because I mean that's the impression I got just because of 7 of 9 is that like she can see the network and communicate with other Borg, but she's still kind of just 7 of 9. But the way you described it was like they're just another set of sensory organs plugged into your brain.
Yeah,
that's horrible.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's like because I wonder about ants, or bees.
Yeah.
Would it be like a programming thing, or is something actually like remote controlling them? And either one kind of sounds uncomfortable.
Right.
But if it's like, there are other things I've seen so the Matrix, I guess, for example, where every person in the Matrix is potentially an agent. But they live their own lives. But when the computers decide to take over their body, they just suddenly lose control.
I always wondered if they were like aware of what was happening and like when the agent left, or is it just like you passed out and you like narcolepsied your day away?
Oh man.
Or do they have like the Buffy effect where they just like the next day they rewrite it in their head?
That would be a good question too.
Well, we got some more questions to add to the list. Oh. Well, listeners, let us know this week, if there were multiple yous, would they all see colors the same way?
Oh no.
Don't think about it. Don't think about it.
And if they didn't and they were the hive mind version.
Oh no.
Oh, we've broken the system again.
Oh boy.
Jim, do we have any listener mail?
We do. And as always, if you want to send us listener mail, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com. You can comment on our blog. You can like us on Facebook. You can tweet at vaguelysci. And this email comes to us from Carbohydrate and is in regards to several episodes, apparently. So Carbohydrate writes, I was just thinking how you talked about the best weapons for the zombie apocalypse at one point. You also recently talked about replacing some or all of your body parts for various reasons. If you replaced your brain with a computer, zombies wouldn't be interested anymore and you could walk right past them. Problem solved.
Yeah, but that would have been a very short episode.
Yeah, but now it's that's a new answer to a bunch of questions merged together.
Yeah.
What if it's a nerd zombie and
Oh no,
they want that processing power? Like they've got to play Skyrim on the latest
techno zombie.
They have to figure out how to get Skyrim to run on their TI-83, and they need an electronic human brain. Yeah.
Can it run on my Commodore 64? It's got to be doable.
Yeah, well, I'm sure someone's done that by now.
It'll boot up in 1,000 days.
Yeah, that it would take like 3 years and 6 months to run the intro. But it would, and it's going to be like one frame every 6 hours. But
one frame for 6 hours.
Yeah. Skyrim's on too many things.
When you're a zombie, you got all the time in the world.
It's true.
What else are you gonna do?
Till somebody comes and hits you with a baseball bat.
Yeah. Hey, if you're in your domicile playing Skyrim, no one's gonna come after you.
That's true.
Unless they're trying to loot your house. I mean, you got to think long term here.
Yeah, but if you're a zombie, you don't really care about possessions. Well, thank you very much for that email. And if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and all the other great places that podcasts like to hang out. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out, and so does telling your friends.
So tell the alternate versions of you that you've recently made friends with.
Yeah.
Podcast views skyrocket. That's hundreds of marks tune in immediately.
Perfect. I love it. Our vaguely musical intro is composed by Anthony Pizzelli, and don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. Not only does it help to support a show that you listen to, I'm not going to say it's your favorite show because I'm not going to presume, but but there's also cool stuff on there like skateboards and mugs, and you could drink coffee while riding a skateboard. That's not safe. Don't do that.
I mean, you do you.
Yeah, it's less dangerous than skitching, so.
Well, so I remember skitching. Oh, that was a terrible idea. Well, I did not give you really a proper introduction, so thank you, Mark, for being our guest this week.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.
For Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Mark.
And I am Derek.
And I'm Jim.
It's still Mark.
Toodaloo, everyone.
Wait a minute. I just got that. There's two of you each.
Yeah,
Never mind.
Oh, I didn't get that.
Oh, that was my, yeah.
That's good. I like that.
Oh, great. You all came to visit yourselves, and I'm just here alone in my room.